For my office folks, you know that old saying that's saying, hey, this meeting could have been an email? That's what this latest episode of Tulsa King feels like. I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the latest episode called Adobe Walls right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, you can like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome. We're in another year, 2023, but the train of Tulsa King keeps going. We're on episode 8 of Tulsa King. Sadly, unfortunately for me, this is the episode that I've liked the least of the entire season. And it's because it feels like a filler episode. It feels like, hey, let's stretch this thing out. We have a 10 episode order. We got to get to 10 episodes because the episode's only 36 minutes. It's relatively the shortest one that they think they've had this season. And a lot of the things that they have kind of like spinning their wheels, things that we've already sort of known, things that we've seen, characters that we had not seen in quite some time, all of a sudden reappear like, oh yeah, they're important too, because we're just trying to fill this episode up before we get to the penultimate and the final episode of the season. And for me, fortunately, that makes it feel a little bit like a filler, and we're stretching to kind of get to the beginning of this episode and the end of this episode. The end of this episode is where the meat is and where we're kind of off to the races for the next 2 episodes. This episode starts off with Mitch and Dwight trying to teach Bodie's gang, the folks at the dispensary, how to shoot a gun. It's a sort of tongue-in-cheek, wink-wink meeting, but it also is kind of saying, hey, you guys need to protect yourselves. They're not taking well to this. They're a band of misfits. Tyson is holding the gun like he's seen all the music videos do sideways, and they're like, that you're going to shoot everything in the range except for the target you're trying to hit at. And that's when Dwight and Mitch just say, hey, we need to go ahead and find some other muscle to sort of boost our ranks because these guys aren't going to be able to protect us. Except for Grace, who can shoot that gun like nobody's business. But Grace also checks Dwight. And he's kind of like, why do we have to protect ourselves? It's like, well, I just want you guys to know how to use a gun. She's like, I know how to use a gun. She talks about her past with her father and all of that. But she essentially says, hey, you need to realize that you put us in this situation. And we're all adults. We know what we've gotten ourselves into. But you need to at least acknowledge the fact that, hey, you put us here. And there's something coming down the line that is dangerous enough that you need to teach us how to use a gun. I'm going to need you to apologize. For the first time, probably since he said anything to Tina, his daughter, we actually feel like Dwight's sincere in his apology to Grace. This just shows you how sort of recluse Stacy is. Stacy just walks up on Waltrip in full-on ATF gear and kind of like, yo, where's Roxy? I know you killed her, and I know Pike is gone. And Waltrip kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. In fact, you're right, I have not seen them in a while, but I'm not sure where they're at. And she's like, I'm coming after you. He kind of sort of just dismisses her. She's like, I'm not done talking to you. And he's like, oh, we are done. And it's a scene that's essentially showing how off the cuff she is and how reckless she is. And basically, she's showing all of her hand prematurely without really a plan in place. And Waltrip is going to be a few steps ahead and also coked out on his mind. This is another thing that sort of just introduces the fact that he's a cokehead in this episode. Something that this show continues to put things in this episode as if we've already known. It was last episode with Pete and saying, hey, I want to go to college this whole time. This episode's like, hey, oh, by the way, in addition to being a madman, calculated and kind of crazy, he's also a cokehead. And we just see him sniffing and going off the rails. Now, I don't know if he becomes a cokehead, Walter becomes a cokehead because the world is sort of falling in on him and Dwight's getting on his nerves, but this seems like a habit that he's had. But yeah, that happens in this episode. Mitch, Dwight, and Bodie meet with their business partner, who basically the farmman who owns all the weed, the Native American, and they kind of want to bring him in on the business. They give him the business plan of the casino, and they put it up on up to him. It's like, hey, we'll give you 20%, but we need to have you put in on the deed for this so we can make this happen because you are a Native American and you're on Native American ground. And he goes and thinks about it. Bodie eventually does sort of talk him into it. It's like, hey, you're already in with us, and I'm in. I've been in too deep, and Dwight's done some things where I've gotten into some trouble, but he's a multiplier. He's a force multiplier. Anytime that he gives you something, he multiplies that times a bunch. And so why not? Bodie sort of talks him into actually saying, all right, fine, what the hell, I'll do it. But in that, Dwight and Mitch also asked for some muscle. Like, hey, do you have any more people that can kind of back us up? Because we need some. The world is starting to come in on us, and we need to kind of just back ourselves up. Now they're only aware of Waltrip, but Chicky and his crew are starting to come in as well. Because in the next scene, we see Chicky, Goody, and all those folks at the funeral for Pete. And in that, Chicky's essentially saying, "Hey, yo, we need to go ahead and take out the main man. We need to go ahead and take out Dwight." And they start using code language a bit until everybody catches on except for Johnny. Johnny is one person like, "Hey, wait a minute, are we just talking about whacking Dwight?" And they're like, "Yeah, well, haven't you been listening?" And he's kind of saying, "Hey, look, he's basically an uncle. He's a made man, and he's basically the closest thing your dad had to a brother. There's got to be something else that we can work out." And they rough him up a little bit, but they're saying like, this is how this is going to be done." It's interesting because Goody seemed to be more of the middle ground, but he seems to just be going with whatever Chicky is saying. Um, I have a feeling that at some point, the scene that we don't get to see between after Chicky tells Dwight about Pete, he says, "I'm not going to the funeral." There's probably a sequence or something that occurs in there where he's like, "Hey, go back there. I need you to have my back. If you try to come after me, just give me the heads up." I think that's sort of what's going to be at play there, because Goody just seems to be so gun ho. But all right, cool. Well, then this is what we're going to go do. So I think he's going to kind of relay back to Dwight, like, "Hey, the plan is for this, and we're coming." We see a couple of scenes with Tyson where one, he doesn't feel like he's in on everything that Dwight is doing. It's a scene that we've seen before where he's like, "Hey, I don't feel like I'm deserving enough, or I don't get paid enough." And this time he doesn't feel like he's in the know enough. Mitch is more the person that he sort of confides in. And some of that's because Mitch is a criminal. So he's like, I can kind of talk to him like that. Tyson, he's trying to keep away and at bay a little bit because he's protecting him. He's like, while you did make a decision to be my driver, to be in this business, I do want to still kind of incubate you a little bit and not put you in all harm's way. And also, if you don't know everything, if you ever get jammed up, you can deny because you won't know the entire story. But he wants to know. And that happens when they're sort of staking out the crooked cops that pulled him over before and the ones that Dwight sort of knows that are on Waltrip's payroll. He's just watching them and sort of get the lay of the land. He then has a scene later with his dad, kind of heartfelt. A scene that could have occurred at some other time because I have already assumed that Tyson was no longer in his house with his dad and his mom. This is all of a sudden saying, like, "Hey, yeah, he's moving out." And I'm like, "Well, shouldn't that have happened some time ago?" Like immediately after Tyson's dad left the bar from helping him, I feel like Tyson should have probably been out of the house. But whatever. Tyson is leaving out. He's packing his truck and they're leaving. They have a heartfelt moment in the driveway where he's like, "Yo, I used to be that father that was on the playground and seeing you at this high playground jumping gym, and my heart was in my throat out of concern for you, and you made it out okay." And Tyson's like, "See, I'm going to make it out okay." He's like, "This is different. It's something else. My heart is in my throat, but I gotta let you go. I gotta let you do what you want." And he hugs him. And they say, "I love you." The mother never comes out to see him. She's just crying. She's too broken. So it's a heartfelt scene to show that Tyson is now officially out on his own. Where he's staying, maybe at the hotel with Dwight, I don't know, but he is now fully invested and not under his parents' roof. The FBI, ATF all have sort of a meeting to sort of converse files. Um, and it's at that point where Stacy's pushing hard for us to kind of make a run at Waltrip. And we all know what it is. She wants to kind of get Waltrip off the board so she can remove herself from this and it can kind of just all be focused on Waltrip and we kind of just let the white sort of ride off into the sunset and not worry about him. Because she doesn't want any blowback on her. What's interesting is that the FBI folks do say, "Hey, like we've seen some surveillance of Dwight. We've been watching him. Nothing really comes up. There's him with a girl named Margaret, which sort of makes Stacy think a little bit like, oh, she's with DeVoe. Okay, got it." And then they say that there's another woman that she's with, but we couldn't identify her. They call bullshit. um, I feel like they're holding that ship close to the vest because they know it's Stacy, and they're kind of just like, "All right, we're not gonna blow up your spot yet, but we are well aware that you are the other person that has been hanging with them. It's going to probably come up at some point in time that, like, hey, especially based on what happens at the end of this episode, and what we know that you are an associate of his. And so it's going to be interesting to see when they use that because there's no way that they don't know that it's her because she's so drunk and sloppy. She's not aware of her surroundings. She's definitely has been tailed and surveilled about this. Ben Hutchins is a name that comes up as one of the muscle folks that Dwight and Mitch and Tyson get from their drug dealer, the Native American drug dealer. I can't remember his name at the moment. And he's kind of like, all right, cool, yeah, I'm in. I'm always going to murder somebody or whack somebody. Like they're about that life, so they're willing to do whatever. So he's got a little bit more muscle. He's got a little bit more bolstering up of the ranks, so he doesn't quite have to worry about the the folks like Grace and Bodie and them kind of getting their hands dirty. Tina does make a call, and it's another person. It's another thing where we're spinning our wheels. Like this is the same sort of sequence that happened in the episode before. We either need to get her to Oklahoma or we don't. But like this type of scene is just like, oh, we've done this before. Tina calls Dwight and kind of is like, hey, I'm thinking about what's taking you up on your offer and moving to Oklahoma. It's her olive branch a bit to say, hey, I would like to come out there and be with you and be under your protection and be with you. So at that point, Dwight kind of puts a pin in it. It's like, oh, well, hold on. Let's wait. I know I said that, but let's hold on and be hang there. I just want to get everything set up. I want to get everything. He lies and doctors it up, says I want to get everything set up. I want to make sure that when I meet my grandkids, everything's perfect. Yada 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 yada. It's because all hell is breaking loose, and he needs to make sure that Waltrip is off the board before he brings he takes Tina and her family from one dangerous situation to another dangerous situation. He needs to make sure that this is all cleaned up before he does that. But it does seem like their connection is sort of getting closer together. He says, I love you. She doesn't really give it back, but you can kind of tell that, yeah, we need to work on some things, but I'm open to it now. But it's unclear if that is out of actual care and actually wanting to be this. I still, like I said before in the last episode, I think him taking care of the business with Nico actually did bring them closer, but I also think she's frightened of what's going to take place with her family. The FBI and the ATF and all of those folks come in hard on Waltrip. They raid the place. They take most of the Black McAdam group in, except for Waltrip and Robbie, I believe. Those are the two that get away, and they can't find them. So they got most of them in custody, but those two are gone. It's at that point that Waltrip starts kind of like making demands to the crooked cops that he has on the payroll, like, hey, yo, I need you to go him up, Dwight. Go ahead and arrest him while he's sniffing some coke on his bike. Go ahead and arrest him and just put him in a cell, and then let me know when he's in that cell because I need to go have a conversation with him. Oh, he's gonna go kill him. But that's the plan. He's like, yo, do this. And the cop's like, I can't just go do them. He's like, you better make this happen. They do attempt to arrest Dwight and Tyson. They pull him over. Tyson's in the driver's seat. Dwight gets out and he kind of puts his hand in his jacket as if he has a gun. And he threatens them. He's like, yo, you better get back in your car, pull off, and turn around and don't even think about what's happening right here. I'm gonna put a hole in you so big that you can literally see through it. They back down, and then they get in, which is interesting. It's interesting that they back down because they technically doesn't make sense. They have the up on him. There's two of them, two guns. He's an older man, so even if he has a gun, I feel like in that situation, probably could take him. But I just think they don't want to be there. Like they don't want to be there, so that's what kind of gives them a pause. Like I don't want to do this anyway. So cool. Turns out Dwight didn't even have his gun on him. He's left back at his hotel. So they pull off. But that's the situation, how he gets out of that. But from the raid, the FBI and them see that like, yo, Waltrip's in a lot of stuff. He's flushing money through global markets. Like he's got his hands in multiple things. We need to find him and bring him to justice. That's basically the goal. Stacy's happy with that because they're like, cool, we got a warrant for Waltrip. We can go ahead and get him off the board and shut everything else down. Anything else that he's got going on, we can close the ranks on that. One small little piece that occurs in this that could be bigger for another season or later down the line. Margaret Devereaux's ex-husband, shows up. The one who actually owns the ranch or stable. And he kind of checks Dwight. And he basically is like, yo, I know what you are. I know who you are. I know what you're trying. Like you're going to be a moocher that's trying to mooch money off my ex-wife. So people like you, that dog don't hunt down here. You're an old relic. And it seems like he knows Dwight, and I don't know if he knows Dwight as far as being the mafia man, but he feels like there's been enough people that have circled his ex-wife for money that he knows the type of person he is. Whatever the case may be, I feel like you don't just introduce that type of character, make him make that strong of a statement without something going on with the Devereaux. Like they may be the big bads in the future, specifically him, and he may get in a little too tight with her, and all hell breaks loose. I think that was just more of a sprinkling in of the future, not necessarily anything that's going to take place this. But I think anybody like Margaret who seemed to be keen on knowing more about how it felt to murder somebody, she likes the bad boys, and it's clear that her ex was one, and her new guy Dwight is one, and those two are going to butt heads at some point in time. There are really only three pieces that finish off this episode, and I feel like all three are this triangle or these threads that lead to something bigger that's going to happen in the penultimate and the final episode. First, Chicky puts on an Oscar worthy performance, and he calls Dwight and says, "Hey, look, we need to let bygones be bygones. My dad loved you. You're like the only vestige of family that I have now that my dad's gone. We need to chop it up and sort of just bury the hatchet. And so I'm going to come to Oklahoma, and I want us to have a dinner and just bury everything. Put the Nico stuff behind us, put Armand stuff behind, like put all that stuff behind us, and just work on us being better for the future." And Dwight is like, "No, that's not going to be necessary." Jake's like, "No, I insist." It's very much he's being more endearing and not a demanding, saying, "Yo, I need to be here. Like I'm coming." It's more of like, "I think we should do this. I'm coming, so we can kind of break the ice and break the bread." Dwight's got enough shit going on that he doesn't need this, but I think the thought of closure uh, perhaps means something to Dwight. So hey, maybe I can just get out of this. Um, Dwight does mention that he is aware that Pete tried to take a hit out on him when he was in jail, so that's why kind of a reason why he just like, "I'm not showing up. I'm not gonna be a hypocrite." He understands. It's like, "All right, cool." Obviously, it's all to play. It's all a ploy. I feel like though Dwight's going to be given the heads up because Goody's going to kind of let him know, like, we're not coming in peacefully. Um, some of that is for naught because the final sequence makes that a little bit muckier of how they're going to be able to actually get to Dwight, but we'll get to that in just a second. Because there's a sequence in the middle between Clara. That's a name you haven't heard in a while because we haven't seen her probably since episode 3. But Clara is Armand / Manny's wife, the wife that he sort of gained when he ran away and started a family with him. She has been of the belief that Manny, that guy, is the docile, normal, everyday husband who can kind of does the normal jobs and is not a made man. He's not into criminals, not having guns pulled on him. Armand is showing himself. He's putting certain sauce in the pasta. He's making it all Italian and Sicily styled, and it kind of starts rubbing her the wrong way. And she's been thinking about like, "Hey, yo, there's a job in Iowa. I think we should go there. We should move the family there." And he's like, "No, we're staying right here. Like, I don't know what what you're talking about. Like, we're fine." She doesn't feel safe, and they get into a pretty heated argument. And she basically gives him an ultimatum: like, you either we move and we get the hell out of here and go somewhere that's peaceful, or we're getting a divorce. And he throws some food. She's like, "Cool, you either just not sleeping here, or we're not sleeping here. But we need to take the night off, and you need to figure out what the hell your next step is." Whenever you start taking scenes like this about a particular person, match that with Tyson's situation earlier with his father, somebody's not going to make it out of this alive. There's going to be some collateral damage. It may be family, whatnot. But Clara specifically seems to be a person that we had not seen for several episodes, and all of a sudden pops up. Something bad going to probably happen to her. From whom, I don't know, because there's multiple people coming in. Waltrip, I think with Chicky coming in and them knowing Armand, they're not going to be able to get to Dwight, so they're going to get to Armand and his family. And I think that's when things are sort of going to get messed up. And the reason they're not going to be able to get to Dwight because of the final sequence in this episode. Final part of this episode, Dwight's going back home after Tyson drops him off, and Stacy just walks up on him, and she's drunk because why wouldn't she be? Therapy goes horribly wrong in this episode for her. But yes, she shows up. She's showing up basically to let Dwight know, hey, lay low. We got a warrant for Waltrip. We're going to get him. We're going to get him. And once we have him, any connection that you have to him will be removed. So just, I need you to calm down because we got this. And Dwight's like, okay, I got you, but I'm not calming down. If he's coming after me, he's got people coming after me. She lets in a little bit that she knows about Margaret, and they play a little coy back and forth of whether or not she's jealous or not. But then Waltrip and Robbie pull up on bikes down the street because they know where Dwight's staying. Stacy catches an eye of it, and Dwight and Stacy open fire on Waltrip and Robbie, and there's gunfire back and forth in the middle of the street. Robbie, Waltrip's number 2, is hit down. Waltrip takes off, but not before getting a shot off on Stacy, who she is hit and bleeding pretty badly. Tyson hears the gunshot, so he quickly turns back around to see if Dwight's okay. And at that point, Dwight gives the gun that he was shooting to Tyson and tells him, "Get the hell out of here! Take the gun away." Because Dwight can't have a loaded gun or a gun that he's fired off on him as a made man, as a person who's coming back from prison. Like, there's rules that he can't get caught with that. But he goes to check on Stacy. The police start coming in droves. Apparently, the police are really quick in Oklahoma because it seems like nobody even made a call. But they come and they see that there's blood on Dwight. They're like, "Hey, did you have anything to do with this?" And he's kind of jammed up at that point. And they ask him his name. He's like, Manfredi, Dwight Manfredi. And it goes off because he's just put himself in the line of fire. He's now within an act of violence as being somebody who should not be around anything like this. And now Stacy, the thing that she's been trying to sort of undo to keep herself apart from Dwight and keep herself apart from Dwight and Dwight apart from Waltrip, it's all sort of collapsed in on her. They're now one and the same. That said, it is going to be very difficult for Chicky and that crew to get a hold of Dwight because he's going to be jammed up for this next episode. So they're going to probably have to go after Armand to sort of get a hold of them and to get sort of a leg hold on them. It's going to be interesting to sort of see how Mitch takes over or does anything while Dwight is probably going to be spending the majority of the next episode behind bars or in some type of interrogation. Well, it does not appear that he has that weapon. It's not clear which bullet, based on the way that they were standing. Stacy probably was shooting at Waltrip, whereas Dwight was probably shooting at Robbie. Robbie is down. He's probably got hit by Dwight's gun, which isn't present. So they don't have the bullet whatever killed him isn't going to match to Stacy's gun. So they're going to have like, well, there's another gun somewhere and you had to have shot it. Could get messy. All in all, a very subpar and okay episode. I feel like those last 3 scenes, the Pete scene, the Clara scene, I guess, and the sequence outside of the hotel when the shooting happens, all could have been placed in a different episode. And everything else that happened in the episode could have literally been lines or line reads or something else that happens elsewhere. I don't know if this series needs to be 10 episodes. I feel like we're stretching ourselves thin. I think we could have easily made this 6 or 7 and made some of the other ones 15 minutes longer to kind of get Tyson leaving home could have happened earlier. Margaret and her ex-husband meeting Dwight could have happened earlier. So a lot of these sequences could have occurred earlier or in a different episode and kind of gotten to the meat and potatoes of this sooner. But I'm still excited. I like what I've seen so far in this series up to this point. So I'm still interested in seeing what the penultimate and the finale is. I feel like this is kind of like that ho-hum moment before that season finale, and then penultimate episode and the season finale come. And I think the last 5 minutes of it, you kind of just like, oh, it's about to get really jammed up for Dwight. And interesting, the Tina of it all plays too, because she's going to be sort of left in the wind if Dwight can't get to her fast enough. What did you guys think about this episode? Am I alone in thinking that this is one of those, let's hurry up and get to the finale type of episodes? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodRADid@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. It's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.